Hey, what's up guys, this is Alex and today we're going to dissect and analyze the hell out of my latest Cuphead / WestWorld orchestral remix. Now, if you didn't hear the track, we're gonna listen to it in a second, but a little caveat. Now, if you're asking yourself, how the hell can I write music like Hans Zimmer or Ramin, Djawadi or those amazing guys that write these orchestrations that are so huge and stuff like that? This tutorial is gonna help you. It's gonna be very long and very in-depth, and I'm gonna give you insight on my thought process behind the track. That sounds, in my opinion, pretty huge. This is probably the best track I've ever written. Now, I wrote this by ear without knowing music theory. So my explanation is gonna be based on ear, I'm gonna explain in very simplistic ways how to do something that sounds super complex like this. And I'm gonna go deep in the why and the how and the what of what I've done here. So grab yourself a cup of coffee because it's time to take 1 hour to check out this tutorial. If you're really interested in learning how to write music that sounds like this. So we're now going to dissect this huge track, instrument by instrument, to see what each instrument is doing, how it's doing it, and why it works. This tutorial is going to be pretty long, but there are some things I will not explain. The things I mentioned in the tutorials I already made in the past, like how to write for strings, how to write for brass, and how to achieve realism and stuff. I'm gonna talk about them a little bit, but not as much in depth as I did in the previous tutorials. So if you're interested in learning more, I do recommend you to check out the rest of this channel, because throughout the course of this year, I must have released like 20 or 40 tutorials or something. So those are gonna help you immensely. But now we're gonna analyze this track and understand how I arranged it. By the way, this video is sponsored by Evident, which is an online music academy run by some dear friends of mine who are incredible composers, way more talented than me, and they are working on movie trailers and AAA video games. Right now, they're also having a Black Friday sale, 30% off on all of their courses. If you want to buy those courses, the link to do so is in the description of this video. And if you buy them from there, you're gonna give me a helping hand to keep on running this channel. But the reason why I mention these courses every time is because, like, you might ask yourself, Alex, where the hell Did you learn all you know in just 4 years? I didn't know anything about music just 4 years ago. What you heard just now is the culmination of 4 years of work and study. But I wouldn't have been so fast if it wasn't for all the courses I took and all the private lessons I took, not only from Evelyn, but from multiple sources. But the Evelyn course, this one, Cinematic Music from Idea to Finished Recording, is the first course I took. It was the foundation of my orchestral music and still is, and it taught me so much. So I really recommend you to check them out. If you want to buy them, the link is in the description of this video. So yeah, that's it for Evelyn. Now let's get to the tutorial that I wanted to show you about how I made this orchestral insane track. So we're gonna go, bit by bit. So we're gonna do the intro first, then we're gonna check out the chorus and so on. So instrument by instrument, as I said, let's start from the most vocal in this part, which is the Western guitars. By the way, I should mention there are 4 main domains you want to pay attention to if you want to write music like this. You should focus at making each one of those domains as rich as possible. So the 4 domains are: first, melody or motifs; second, harmonies, chords and stuff like that; third, rhythms; fourth, variation. I'm gonna talk about all those 4 things. I'm gonna mention them more, like multiple times throughout this tutorial to impress upon you the importance of each. So in the intro, the first thing you hear, the strings and the piano, but the focal element is the Western guitars, which are these ones. The one that are playing the Mr. King Dice melody. And after a while, they become distorted. So let's check out actually what these guitars are doing. Sorry. All right, so as you see here, this was just one guitar, but it's actually 2 tracks. The reason why is that I did some double tracking. Double tracking is where you record the same thing twice, and you put one recording completely to pan left and the other completely pan right, and then you put them together. Since those recordings are not the exact same, there's gonna be some notes which shifted, like some notes have a few milliseconds of delay between each other. So you're gonna have this sort of audio illusion of space. It's so weird to explain it in fast ways, but maybe I'm gonna make a tutorial about it. But if you do this, you're gonna have a signal that it sounds much more broad. Now that's much more noticeable when the guitar gets distorted, but that's why I use 2 guitars. And you're gonna see I double tracked every guitar, sometimes I quad track it. Anyway, this is a guitar which I recorded live with my electric guitar, and I fed it into Waves GTR, which is this amp simulator that also has a lot of pedals. And you can pretty much shape your guitar however you want. This is how it sounds like without amplification. Well, with the amplification. Now the result is not that much impressive because this is just clean amplification. But in here it does get distorted because I added the overdrive pedal. So there's 2 things happening here. There is this. And I use this, this is a repetition of the main motif, right? And when I do repetitions in this track, I focused on making things as variable as possible. And whenever I do a repetition, I try to add something new. So the first thing I added is this strum, which is like an open E chord, I think, strummed in reverse from the thinnest string to the thickest. And then I distorted it by adding a bit of the overdrive distortion. And I also used the vibro to do the, that type of. This is with vibro and this is without it. So this vibro or vibro, whatever you call it, is creating that Western type of sound. And I used it throughout all of the guitars in the track. And yeah, below that, we also have the same main melody played on overdriven guitar. So this. And this ba 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 ba, that's a bit of a Western twist I put into it. After that, we have another repetition again, and I decided to, again, add something else. So below what we heard, you know, the strums and the main melody, I added this counter melody. And that's just a detail, but you know, the more variation you can bring into your track, the better it's gonna sound. And I don't mean that you need to add lots of things like randomly, but with certain rigor. You see here, whenever I do a repetition, I try to add something. I don't add stuff like whenever, right? And I do this because I don't want to bore the listener to death. So that's pretty much why I do it. I want to keep things interesting. Even if the things we hear are the same motifs and the same melodies all over the place, I still try to add that variation. So the guitar here is playing in the melodic domain, and it's also playing in the variation domain, kind of, because you have changes all the time. So that's the guitar. And yeah, all double tracked, all simulated, like amp simulated with Waves guitar. The other thing we have is the piano, which is playing some chords. This piano is doing this, pretty much. And you notice there is a bit of a delay going on. The reason why is that I wanted to give this piano a sense like of space, especially because I'm using it so much in the intro, and the intro is supposed to be the most atmospheric element, where you set the atmosphere. The reason why I used this vibrato and these guitars was because I wanted to convey that Western feel. So I chose my instrument depending on the genre of what I wanted to make, right? So even when it comes to the piano here, I decided to give it more character by layering it. So one of the libraries I used is the Giant, which is like this classical piano library. I use it every freaking time from Native Instruments. And the second is actually Nexus with a patch from a saloon piano. You know, this type of saloon piano, and I put a low pass filter on the saloon piano, low cut, because I wanted to preserve the low frequencies of the Giant while keeping, you know, the high end of the tuned saloon piano, so the layer kind of sounds like this. We have a natural piano sound, but with a bit of detuning on top of it because I did the layering. So yeah, it's playing chords, so it's playing in the harmonic domain. Then we have the strings, which are doing initially chords, and as you hear here, they're rising and falling, like they're bringing the tension up and bringing it down while conveying the harmonies. Now the chords I'm playing are really basic, but what makes them sound good or impressive is the fact that pretty much there's some, like it's kind of distributed. So the string ensemble is playing like on low octaves. So these ones. But it has a bold sound because it's an ensemble. Then we have some violas playing tremolos, like what we heard before on the string ensemble were sustained. These are tremolos. And I'm making them rise and fall with the expression modulation control, the expression MIDI command. So if you do not know what it is, check out my tutorial on strings. I explained that very thoroughly there. Then we have some violins playing on even higher octaves. Now, same thing with tremolo notes. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's not just blocky notes, blocky chords. I try to add some variation by, you know, having some movements inside. For example, the violas here. So it plays the chord, and then you have this that keeps on going on. And when you hear the whole thing, it's just one slight detail, but you hear it. Like, and this again is variation. It's the little details that really bring life to your track. And you might think, yeah, but that's not it. Yeah, it's actually it. You know, the degree of professionalism that you have in your music is given by all the details that you're able to put in it. Because when you're a beginner, like beginners have this thing that they can write a full structure, they can write a full piece, and they're like, I can write music, why doesn't it sound good? It doesn't sound good because you're ignoring all the details you can put into it because you're a beginner. Those are things you come up with as you progress and get better, right? And you start to really appreciate the impact that even including one extra note will have on your song. So the more details you add with a certain logic, the better it's gonna sound, generally speaking. And you're gonna see that throughout literally all of this track. Then other than that, we have some bass, which is playing pizzicato notes. And they are the root notes of the chords we heard. And then after that, you have a bit of development here. We take away the string ensemble and the violas. We only have the first violins and the basses playing this. So the violins are playing one note here to convey the harmony. One, like below instead, they are playing the Mr. King Dice motif. And then the basses are playing a sort of a bass melody. So yeah, they are turning more melodic now. And they are trying to lead the track somewhere. And the melody is played by the guitar at the same time. So this, you can call it a layer, I guess. You know, what you have between the violins and the guitars. But they're playing on two different octaves. So their frequencies are going to sit around different registers, which is very important. I'm going to mention that later, though. But yeah, ideally, when you write orchestral music, you want to write for multiple octaves and spread your sonic palette throughout all the spectrum available. Then below that, we have some brass. Now, the brass in the beginning, we have some chimbassi following the strings with simple harmonic notes. And rising and falling with the expression as well. Then after that, we have this trumpet thing going on, which is another of those Western elements that takes you in the far West. This Spanish-like trumpet. So you heard this note, you know, those are what makes this trumpet sound more Spanish to me and more alive, you know, because of course you're writing music with a computer, but as many nuances you can put into it to make it feel more human and alive and real, the better it's gonna sound, right? So yeah, we have this trumpet and it's kind of leading the mood, because in here, like, it repeats itself, but it's like it's ending the statement. It doesn't end like this, but it ends like this instead. You know, so it's kind of leading the track somewhere, as well as the main melody is, because the main melody as well is not gonna end with the repetition, which is the same as how it began. So this is what they sound together. So you have this part here, which is the end of this statement, kind of, on the melodic side. Then the percussion below it also helps to, put an end or a transition to this part. So let's check out the percussion. The percussion are doing this, very simple things. We have some tubular bass and some timpani, pretty much. That are playing this doom. It's like they're echoing, like delay, kind of. So again, it's conveying that sense of atmosphere and hugeness. This is not a fast rhythm that wants to bring energy. This is a rhythm that wants to create atmosphere, right? Then other than that, we also have this sort of rolls here. Like I'm gonna show you in MIDI. Here, for example. So these things here, they are rolls, and they are, instead of just, you know, having pum, 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 it's good to have pum, 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 right? Because it brings the energy forth, and it signals that there is a new part that is coming. So, you know, when the intro repeats itself, the percussion are doing something cool. So, where is it actually? Here. So first thing you notice is that now we have some snares coming on. I think they're here. Yeah, you have these snares. And, you know, when you add these elements progressively, as little as they are, they introduce change, which means the track is flowing. That's one thing you want to do. Another thing you have is some piatti. So in this part, like when this repetition comes in, you have this. Sorry, you have this. This is, you know, they're, again, subtle sounds, but when you put them there, they really ease the transition. Because if you were to remove them, let's see how this part would sound. Yeah. All right. I thought I removed them. Wait a second, please. It's still okay because we have that roll, but if I were to remove the roll and the piatti, it would sound completely random. Wouldn't sound as if something new is coming on. And so that's what I did. Then in here we have a much better example of piatti and stuff. So this. So what is happening here is that, you know, we have the snares and stuff. And at the end of this transition, I decided to add some reverse cymbals. Not reverse cymbals, but some cymbals rising. And these cymbals are from Rhapsody Orchestral Percussion, which is a contact library. So this is the cymbal I'm talking about here. And if you put it there, you feel the track opening up, because when you use cymbals, that's what happens. And there's a longer explanation for that, but I'm not going to explain it here. I'm already going longer windedly than I should. Anyway, I put this, and then I put this thing here to really ease this transition. Then I also put some taiko rolls here, which are simply doing this, you know. Again, very simple details, stupid details, but they really help ease the transition, because if I were to remove it, it wouldn't sound as good. So that's that for the percussion. Initially, they just create the atmosphere. At the end of this part, like the melodies, they create the end of the statement and bring you forth to what's next. And what's next is BPM change goes to 155 from 55. And yeah, let's see what happens now in the pre-chorus. So after we had that intro, which is like the most boring part of the track, we start to have things going down, which is, you know, we have this part where you have this. So the first thing you notice is, again, this part is delimited, not only by the cymbals and the stuff I showed you before, but also by acoustic guitars, strums. So these guys, when this part comes in, they do this. And I decided to add this, again, to convey that Western feel, but also to delimit this part, like, with an element that is strong enough to feel like a delimiter. So on top of the, you know, the percussion cymbals and stuff, we have this. And you're gonna hear it throughout the track sometimes. Now this, I recorded it with my classical guitar. And again, it's double tracked. We have one here, another here, and another here. When you put them all together, we get that. So yeah, those are two chords. One is low and the other is kind of higher. And that's pretty much it for the acoustic guitar. We have the electric guitar fading away. But mostly the cool thing we have here is, like, you hear this giant brass. And it's not just a sustained note. It's sustained notes with staccato notes. So it's alternating. So we have this bass trombone doing this. Sorry, doing this. And then there is another bass trombone, as you notice here, which is doing a crescendo note, like that thing, right? So while one is, playing this other one is gonna put an end to this short statement. You're gonna notice I always put ends to statements, and I always delimit parts of the structure because you don't want the listener to guess when a part is over. You want to say, hey, this is the end. This is the end of this part. So here's a crescendo to delimit the end of this part, right? The more elements you put to delimit your structure, the better it's gonna sound, because you're gonna lead the energy, you're gonna lead the listener throughout this journey, and it's gonna be much more interesting to hear as a song. So we have the bass trombone doing that, the chimbassi doing something similar, but apart that, we also have a piano doing something similar to the bass trombone, which is doing pretty much this. It's doing the similar thing, not in what it's doing, but pretty much in the rhythms they have. There is a break here, then they play here, and then there's another break here. Now, in breaks, between breaks, you have a chance to introduce new elements. So you can create this call and response. If you feel like your tracks have these sort of breaks and voids, you can fill them. And what I did is I filled those breaks with some Dulcimer. And that's just, again, a stupid detail, but it brings more life to your track. And also, it made the track more Western because, Dulcimers are freaking Western as hell. So I also did that. And then we have some cellos and, coming in along with the basses. So the basses are doing low notes along with the brass. But there's also other layers of basses doing like short bursts of short notes. And then we have cellos bringing the Western rhythm. So the sustained basses are from Metropolis Ark. The brass also is from Metropolis Ark. The cellos here are from Fluid Shorts, and they have a very dry and sound that doesn't have a lot of low end, which means I needed to accompany this with some basses, because if I didn't, the strings would have been too weak. So that's why I used the basses to have that low end, and the cellos, since they are so thin, I can play fast rhythms without making the mix muddy. So instead of doing da 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 da, I did da 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 da, which is like the sound of a horse galloping, right? So that's freaking Western as hell. At least that's how I see it myself. So that's why I use this rhythm. And the fact that I'm using rhythms now, fast rhythms, compared to the intro, which was kind of boring, is bringing up the energy, because now this is like way more enticing. And you notice the energy way more when you listen to the percussion. So now we have the snare doing right? And we have some tom pam pam pam. These guys here that we didn't hear before. They are playing on the most important notes, the ones that we want to really mark, like what I call the accents. I don't know if that's the right term, but there's a few notes in this whole rhythmic pattern in the cellos and in the percussion and stuff that I really want to stand out. And on those notes, I will use more powerful percussion like the toms, while in the syncopated notes, which are the notes in between each powerful note, I use the snare. So I use the snare both for the syncopated notes and for the important notes. So this, I think, is the snare, I think. No, it's not that one. Sorry. Where did I put the snare? There's too much happening in this track. I'm losing track of things. But anyway, let's hear the audio with the snare then. So this is what the snare sounds like. Very similar to the cellos. There it is. And one thing you notice is that I played with the velocities. Now, this is one thing you must do if you want to write cool rhythms. You do not only need to write the notes, you also need to play with the velocities in such a way that some notes are stronger, or they are slow, less powerful. I'm having problems with speaking English. And this way, some notes will stand out, and that will help you convey an even much more precise sense of rhythm. I talk about this in the percussion tutorial more in depth. Another thing I do to help me with making things sound more human is, you see this swing slider here? It's a FL Studio function that will randomize the starts of your notes by the percentage that you put here. So if I put the swing to 100%, it's just gonna be out of time, because it randomizes with too big of a randomization. So I put it to 15%, kind of. And this kind of shifts all my notes randomly whenever it reads them. So I don't need to shift the notes myself with MIDI. It's gonna do it automatically in a random way. So that also helps into making things more humanized. But yeah, we have the snares doing that, and the big percussion instead of doing pump, 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 and stuff like that. And other than that, we also have again some piatti, I think. Notice how every time a brum note comes in, there's also a piatti crushing. That's because on those notes, I wanted the track to open up. That's what makes those piatti sound that's what makes those brass notes sound even more impressive. When you accentuate them with piatti, it's gonna blow you out of the way, kind of. So yeah, that's also that. And at the end, again, we have both piatti rolls and timpani rolls. Like there's timpani doing, and then you have the piatti that is again leading you towards the next part, which is the chorus itself. This was just a transition, and transitions are really helpful if you need to go from, for example, from 55 BPM to 155. Of course, if you use a transition while doing it, even short, it's gonna ease, going from one part to the other. Because if I just, cut this and put the A part to the B2 part instantly, it would have been like weird change of intensity. So you need to keep things flowing by doing transitions like this, at least in my experience while doing this track. Anyway, now let's check out one of the coolest parts, which is the first chorus of the track. By the way, I wanted to keep this video short, but I'm realizing I'm already 20 minutes in. I'm sorry. I always try to explain not only what I did, but why and how, because I think those three are very important to actually learn things. Because if I just show you, hey, I made this and this and this, you're not going to understand the reasoning behind it. Well, I think if you understand the reasoning behind things, you understand how to apply them and why you should do that, right? So you're going to notice all of my tutorials, if you're new, you're going to notice I speak a lot, and that might turn you down. And if it does, I'm sorry. But if it doesn't, and you really stand and listen, you're going to learn a lot and improve so fast. Anyway, let's get now into the chorus, which is one of the coolest parts. So the first thing you hear now is this. So there is a French horn, which is playing the King Dice melody. So that wasn't really spot on. Some notes are a bit shifted and stuff, but yeah, whatever. Doesn't need to sound perfect. This should be humans playing, right? So if there are a bit mistakes, that's not a problem. Now, when you hear this French horn, it soars on top of everything because it's pretty much, I think, in this part, it's the sound with the highest octave. And the French horn is actually a pretty noticeable sound. So this is sitting mostly in the melodic domain, which is the one that should soar on top of everything. The rhythmic domain and the harmonic domain They are the bed, you know, the foundation on which the melodies should soar. And the variation is like the salting of the of this dish you're cooking, right? So it's like if your music is pizza, rhythmic and harmonic are like the how you call it, the dough of the pizza, and the melody is like the tomato and the mozzarella, and the variation is like how you bake the pizza, kind of like a stupid example, but whatever. Anyway, so now the French horn are the topping, and they're just playing that melody very easily. But below that, we have this. So we have some cymbassi playing the bass melody, and the bass trombone playing on the notes that I wanted to accent in that bass melody. So yeah, that's what they're doing. And then after that, since this repeats itself, like this melody has a repetition, even though it ends differently, it still repeats itself, and it's still gonna bore the listener to death if I don't introduce that variation. So I decided to add this. So we have one trumpet which is playing the melody normally on a higher octave, and the other is playing a counter melody. And as you notice here, some notes are colored differently. That's because they're using a different articulation. So in those notes, I'm using staccato. Because those are fast notes and I want them to really shine. While the others here, the green ones, they are sustained notes. So when you write melodies, you might want to alternate between articulation, because that really gives an edge to your melodies and lines. So this is what the trumpet sound together with the rest. And now we notice the trumpets a little bit more than the French horn, because they are playing on a higher tone. They have a higher register as an instrument, but also this counter melody I put into trumpets, I'm playing it on a higher octave on purpose, because I wanted to shift the attention to the counter melody. We still have the same theme going on in the back. So, and yeah, we also have the same thing going on guitars. So the guitars kind of shut up for a minute here. Not for a minute, but for a while. When this chorus starts, there are no guitars. When the trumpets come in, the guitars do what the trumpets are doing, which is this. Same thing that the trumpets are doing. And I added the guitars to enforce the trumpets with some layering. So that's what they're doing. And other than that, the strings are pretty cool in this part as well. So the strings here, they combine the rhythm with the cellos, and here it really takes over. Like, not takes over, but it develops. So this is what the cello do, kind of, after that transition. And you're gonna notice this rhythm is spread throughout the whole track, because again, it reminded me of the gallop of a horse or something. It sounds Western to me, this type of rhythm, so I try to use it throughout. So the strings, the cellos now are doing bum 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 bum, which is the melody of the bass melody of the original song. I tried to put it here because, of course, this is a cover. I added lots of original things, but I also wanted to preserve the original ideas, just shift them to a Western context. So I added the rhythm like that. The basses, instead, let's check out what they are doing. So one layer of basses is doing pum, 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 like it's playing the most important notes in the bass melody, kind of, accenting notes. The other is playing sustained, these notes here we heard. And then we have some sub bass, which is layered with that sustained bass, which is this one. It's almost unhearable because you see it sits around the very low register. And I decided to add it there because this register is not reached by any other instrument. So I decided to add the sub bass to make the low end a bit more, populated. So layered with basses. That's better. Now, yeah, that's what the basses are doing. And if you put them together with the cellos, they're pretty nice. That note, like pum, 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 that I put once in a while really enforces the rhythm. And the fact that I'm using, velocities and stuff really helps the rhythm as well. So that's what I did with the cellos. But after, like in the second part of this chorus, again, in the strings too, I wanted to bring some variation. So what did I do? As you're gonna notice, it's similar to what I did in the brass. I increased the tone by adding string instruments that sit on a higher register that will allow me to go on higher octaves. So here we only have cellos and basses, which are the most dull and dark string instruments. And here I added violas and first violins and second violins. So let's check out what those three guys are doing. So, well, one of them, I don't remember which one right now, but one of those three are playing the King Dice melody. No, this is playing, guess what? The trumpets counter melody. Right? I'm not introducing anything new. I'm just taking that melody and putting it on the violas and playing it with the sort of rodeo galloping rhythm. The first violins are playing, I think, the King Dice melody. Yeah. On two different octaves. While the second violins are doing a cool thing. So I could have left it like this, right? Without the second violins, and it would have been pretty okay. But I decided to add some variation. So in some moments, the second violins, in some moments, they're just enforcing the notes by bringing some accents. In other moments, when the melody rests, kinda, I did these runs here, that you hear here. So yeah, and at the end, they close this. So you have these fills that kind of bring more interest when the melody rests. At the end of this second repetition, I decided to use the second violins to close the statement with style, with this. So I broke the expectation. You were expecting a fourth run, right? Because we have runs, and by this time the listener is like, all right, there's gonna be another run. I'm like, nope, statement's over. So I close the statement in this way. Bum, 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 bum. And you see it rises, so the tension, like when you rise in terms of tone, you also bring the tension higher. So in this part, you're like, oh my God. Like it really rises, like the tension rises and you expect something to change soon. It's a statement closement. Closement. The hell. Anyway, below that we have some percussion. Doing the same things as before, like the snare is following the cellos, etc. The piatti are hitting on every note, every part and every note I want to really enforce. And then let's see how it evolves. Yeah, at the end of the first repetition, I did this thing. So we have this. While the piatti here are only playing one note in a while, like one every 2 quarters or something. Here at the in this part before the second repetition, I wanted to create this fill. Because it just makes things more interesting, and it pre-announces that I'm putting new elements in the second repetition, right? That's it's a bit weird, but whenever I try to delimit repetitions and to introduce something new because of that fourth domain like variation. And I did the same thing, I think, in with snares. Like it's not pam 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 pam. It's pam 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 pam, right? And then we have the timpani doing something similar. They are doing, I think, a roll, right? And it all serves the same purpose. I just wanted to bring more energy to this new repetition. So yeah, that's just what they're doing. And I think they're doing the same thing here. I think in the percussion, I didn't add anything new. Oh no, I did. The tubular bells. Before they were just playing simple notes, and now they're playing in the melody. Nothing too crazy though. And at the end of that, we have again that fill, and then we have some taiko rolls to make this final, like to mark the end of this part of the structure in style. So yeah, all together, there is the trumpets and like the melody of the trumpets and the melody of the French horn bringing, like, closing the statement. There is the second violins closing the statements like hell, and the percussion feel that we heard before when things were about to change. So now we're hearing it again, and we know, all right, this is the feel that says that things are about to change. So everything is coming together to an end. And after that, we have the breakdown. So we had, like, in this part, we had pretty much the energy is peaking. It reached its peak, kind of. So it makes sense to bring things down a little bit. So let's check out how I did that in this breakdown, which is the C part. By the way, I forgot to mention in the first part of the chorus, we have some solo cello playing the same melody as the French horn. So this. The thing. And yeah, and on the repetition, we have the big guitar strums again. And those are the two things I forgot to mention. But let's move now to the breakdown. This is the part that really made me cry because I'm not good at guitar. I'm not good at any instrument, really. So when I have to record instruments live, I cry. So in this part, the first thing you hear are the string ensembles. This is something I do. In my breakdowns, I always like to put these big-ass string ensemble chords. So we have this going on. Now, don't ask me what chords I did because I don't know. I've read music without knowing theory. I read music by ear, and I have my modus operandi of doing these things. And I made a tutorial about it, the strings tutorial. So if you're interested, go check out that tutorial. But what I'm doing here is trying to convey a sense of harmony. That kind of like it still is in the same mood, but kind of make things more quiet and calm, and accompanies the melody that you're gonna hear in this part. And yeah, what is happening here, the cool thing that is happening is that, yeah, this harmony repeats itself, but again, I close the statement by going up. Because now I'm leading to, like, this final part is leading to the second chorus, which is the final chorus. So I wanted this harmony to go high and higher to build a hype. So that's what I did with these strings here. You're gonna see that I did that on all the different instruments. But let's see, before we see the rest of the strings, I want to show you what the guitar is doing, to show you the melody in this part. So we have the acoustic guitar coming in this part for real, with a sort of solo melody, which sucks. Not the melody, no, not the melody, it's my playing sucks of this guitar. It's really terrible. And yeah, let's actually listen to it so I can later explain you. This is the melody. So the strings are pretty much accompanying this melody, sort of. After that, I decided, since I told you that I wanted this part to build a hype for the second part, I decided first to, again, limit the repetition of this part with these big guitar strums. And other than that, I decided to add this. It's almost not hearable because that was the worst playing I did in this part, in this track, but this. And this is the same part where the strings go higher. And I wanted to delimit this as a little transition. So yeah, we're gonna see this part later because this is the transition to the next part. This is not exactly part of the breakdown. But yeah, we have this going on. And then other than that, we have some cellos and basses, I think, doing pizzicato notes. So this. The reason why I added those notes is because I didn't want to lose that sense of rhythm that I built so far. So I kept that sense of rhythm by adding these sort of alternated pizzicatos. And I did the same thing on the brass. Actually, these are winds, not brass. I added some bassoons playing that thing. Why did I choose bassoons? Because those two are kind of Western, in my opinion. So we have that. And below that, we have some percussion, which are just delimiting. They're not creating the sense of rhythm. They're just used as delimiters. So after one repetition, we have this, kind of. Now, this wasn't the repetition. This was, yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, we have this to delimit this part. And then we have this again. Oh yeah, this was after the repetition. So in here, the percussion start to come back to life again. You know, for the first part, they were quiet. It was just this. Now we have this, which is more developed. And these are epic toms from 8dio. Epic toms. Sorry, it's lagging. Yeah, epic toms and epic Dohls from 8dio. And then you have the Rhapsody orchestral percussion that I showed you before. The snare is from Berlin Orchestra inspired. So yeah, they are playing faster notes. And then comes the transition, which I'm gonna show you later. But yeah, I think it's time to show you the transition. So after this part, we oh no, I forgot one thing. Sorry, there's so many things happening that I keep forgetting. So in this part, where we have the calm breakdown, I decided to add something else again, and I added this, which is like the Spanish trumpet solo played by Pedro, my imaginary friend. This sounds Spanish and Western as fuck. So I added it there because I wanted, this is not from the original track, it's something I wrote. I wanted it there, so I added it there. And I played the same thing on lower octaves on French horn, I think. Again, as you see, I'm tweaking the notes. The short notes, I use staccatos. The long notes, I use marcatos or sustains. Because if I didn't, it would sound terrible. Like, let's check out what this would sound if I just use sustain notes. Not as expressive as this. So we have this going on. This is like a Spanish trumpet solo on top of whatever we built so far. And yeah, I think bass trombone. Yeah, the bass trombone is also playing the same solo. But this, like the bass trombone and the French horns, other than lowering their volume a little bit, their octaves are also lower. So the one we hear really is the trumpet, you know, because it's sitting on higher octaves. The tone is higher, so. The French horn and the bass trombone are being the body of the bass of the trumpets, kind of. After that part comes in, something happens. Everything, like all the instruments we put on hold that disappear, come back, and everything comes together. So, where should I start from? Yeah, let's actually start from the trumpets, because they are what's leading track forward. In this repetition, we have the trumpets which are bringing that variation again, and after they take charge of bringing variation, they bring the tension higher and higher by reaching very high octaves. So it's not, sorry, it's not, no, it's, and then it ends like this. That's like super, like, it goes higher and higher, and like, oh my god, this is becoming epic, right? So this is like, this Pedro is leading the rest of the orchestra higher and higher. And let's see what the rest of the brass does. This is my favorite thing I wrote for this track. When the Pedro goes wild, the French horn enforce him by doing, staccato notes, these ones. There are actually multiple layers. 2, I think. 1 is doing this. And then the other is doing. So 1 is sort of melodic, the other is harmonic. And before those, though, I added this, which, is just drags you in. It's more realistic, kind of. So we have that, and then we have this, which is like doubling the melody of the Pedro trumpet. And notice, like those nuances again, they are very important in my opinion. So we have those epic French horn staccatos, and I think the bass trombones are doing something similar. So yeah. Oh yeah, when it goes to the end, the bass trombone are also doing, I don't remember on which patch, but yeah, here. That's just another detail I decided to add. The more details you can add to your various instruments, the better it's gonna be. So this is the brass, and there's also a tuba that comes in this part that, gives that warmth, because now it brings the low end. Well, not. All right, it's not super warm, but it brings something that we didn't have before. We didn't have lots of low end here before in this breakdown. So when the tuba comes on with the double basses, as you're gonna see later, the bass, like the low frequencies, get filled again. So suddenly you're like, oh, something, like the power is back, right? And then the bassoons, what are they doing actually? So they're doing that thing. You're gonna see this on the strings as well. And then which is the thing that the bass trombone is doing. So you notice throughout this track, it's not as if I'm writing different melodies for every single instrument. I'm just taking basic ideas and distributing them throughout different instruments and interpreting them differently, slightly, on every instrument family, but it's still the main idea being played on different instruments. That's pretty much how orchestral music is made. Like, people have this misconception that you have to write different things for every different instrument, and what ends up happening is that they have these tracks that are complete mayhem and chaos, and you're like, oh, what is this? It's not so nice to hear. I'm confused. Well, if you try to do not too many different things, but do the same thing a bit differently on each instrument family and spread it throughout the different octaves, that's the most critical thing, you get these good results. And ideally, every frequency range needs to be balanced. You need to have as much low end, as much mid, and mids you have. So yeah, and you also need to have a bit of high end. I talked about this in the tutorial called the #1 mixing rule to get your music to sound professional, and also in the equalization and spectrum tutorial, which I recommend you to watch. So yeah, the brass is doing that. And that's that. That's like, this part is like, it's my favorite. Then we have the strings, which are also like bringing the energy forward by introducing elements that were long gone in the breakdown. So now we see the rise of the first violins and second violins. But let's check out first what the cellos and basses are doing. So they were doing this. Very quiet, but they're bringing the track forward. The bass is bringing the sustained notes back, which, as I told you before, it's creating that low end that we removed before. So now everything is a bit warmer. But the biggest difference here in terms of tension is brought by the first violins and the second violins, which are doing this sort of arpeggio that rises and rises. So yeah, first violins are doing that. The second violins are doing, I think, the same thing, but on a higher octave, I think. And when you put this together with the strings ensembles that goes higher and higher, and in here we also have on the bass pizzicatos. So when you put it with the brass, it's just everything is going so high together. Like, oh God, what's happening? I'm feeling like lifted up. That's because everything is lifting you up, kind of. And before we had that sense of breakdown, so everything was quiet, rhythms were slow. And now we have this sort of runs and arpeggios that are like, you're like, what the fuck? So that's, variation for you. Then after that, I wanted to show you this before. First thing, I marked this sort of transition by using the strums. So once that transition comes, we have so yeah, those are two markers I used. And we also have some guitar chords, which are not so good, but whatever. They are there. And yeah, while the melody of the breakdown kind of fades away after this. So here I didn't play it again. No, I decided to remove it to leave the space for the kick-ass transition that we have, like the yeah. And then below that we have what? Yeah, we also have a Dulcimer doing the same melody as the guitar chord. And the Dulcimer itself is going higher. So everything is going higher in this part. That's why it sounds so much more powerful than the rest. And in this transition, we have the percussion, which are pretty strong now. Because for the breakdown, we never used piatti. So the track sounded close. We never used taiko rolls in this breakdown. So the track quieted down, right? But once I open it again, check out what I do. So there is some taiko rolls. There are some taiko rolls. I cannot speak English for the life of me. Sorry. Doing this. Then there's the tubular bells doing their own thing. Then you have the epic Dohls and epic toms doing this. So they're doing kind of a rhythm that goes on with nicely with the rest. And you have the snare and timpani. Same rhythm as the Epic Dolls, really. And this. Now, if I were to remove, I want to show you the importance of gongs and piatti and stuff like that. Let me remove the gongs and piatti. This is what it would sound like without them. Compared to this. If you want to understand why it's like that, check out my layering tutorial, which I called how to create huge cinematic impacts with layering. That tutorial is based on an example with a cinematic impact, of course, but that layering technique applies to everything in your music production. And that's the reason why when I use piatti, it sounds open, and when I don't, it sounds closed or dull. But yeah, I'm not going to explain that here, but check out the tutorial if you missed it, because it's a goldmine of information. And that information can bring your tracks from like 50% of quality to like 80%. That information alone. So yeah, now that we saw the transition and the breakdown, let's actually check out the last chorus and the finale. By the way, I forgot to mention them multiple times, but I hope you realized how this track is sitting in the 4 domains, like how this track is rich melodically, harmonically, rhythmically, and in terms of variation, because that's what the main arrangement is based on. Now, in this final chorus we have here, this chorus is pretty much has the same thinking as the second. This second chorus has the same thinking as the first. So I think now we have again violin. The melody on French horn. Yeah. But one thing you notice is that, so you have the melody on French horn, and this melody has moments of break, right? Sorry, the melody is on bass trombone, actually. So it's just and when I wrote this, it was okay, but it wasn't enough in my mind. So I thought, what can I add to it? What is lacking? And I noticed, wait, there are some holes, some breaks in the melody. So what I did is I added some trumpets that filled those holes with these notes. This. Bum, bum, bum. And I think I'm doing the same thing on French horn. No, it wasn't the French horn, sorry. I'm doing the same thing on other instruments, but let's check out what the French horn is doing. Oh yeah, I'm doing it on French horn. So the French horn are doing 3 things. I'm doing but on staccatos, and I'm doing that on staccatos because I want to convey more energy to that main melody. Then they're doing something like that, and the the feel notes from the trumpets, and then they're doing That is the bass melody for this part, which is played both by the French horn, I think also by the bass trombone, and probably the bassoons. Let's check out what the bassoons are doing. Sorry, I don't remember everything. I completed this track a few days ago. No, the bassoons are doing something similar to what they were doing in the breakdown. But yeah, the French horn is pretty much taking care of the low end of the brass. But in here, I'm doing the same thing I did before, where I took one melody in the chorus, and for the first half it was on low octaves, on the second it was on high octaves. Here I didn't use the melody straight away on French horn because I wanted first to use it on low octaves, and then on the second repetition I wanted to capitalize on the French horns I didn't use to play that melody on a higher octave. So now the French horns in the second repetition are playing that melody on higher octaves, And, you know, it's a good practice if you want to repeat a melody to repeat it on a higher octave and stuff like that, as I showed you before. So that's what I'm doing here. And now in French horn, I think I also have some, you know, sort of sustain notes. These guys. No, these guys, sorry. And what are they doing exactly? They're bringing the tension higher because they're going higher in tonality, and they're also conveying that sense of harmony. I think they're also being doubled maybe in the bass trombone. I don't remember exactly. Maybe. Yeah. So I put that to raise the tension to make this part more thick. And in terms of harmony, and yeah, that's that for the brass. Here, there is the finale, which we're going to check out later. Now, let's check out the rest of what the instruments are doing in this second chorus. Let's check out the strings. So here, as you see again, they're playing on the low tonality. They're conveying that sense of bass. You have the cello doing bum 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 bum, which is the bass melody. And then you have the violas doing what the trumpets are doing with the, you know, playing between the breaks of the melody. That thing. And I added it because if I didn't, it wouldn't have sounded as much as alive. So for example, if you take this and I remove the trumpets, you kind of still hear it because the French horn are playing the pam pam pam. But if I even remove the French horn, it's like, yeah, but it's not so full, right? So in here, instead, you have the thing I told you before about increasing the octaves. I introduced the two elements I didn't use, the first violin and the second violins. Let's check out the first first. First. They're bringing the melody to a higher octave. The second violins instead are again building the hype with crazy arpeggios and shit. This is what I'm doing. So it's very soft in the beginning, but it gets higher and higher. And you feel it, even if it's not like in the center, even if it's not in your face, you feel this thing in the back, which is going higher and higher. It's like a riser, you know, those electronic sounds that go, it's that same thinking. I didn't use any electronic sounds, didn't use any trailer hits in this track. But you can simulate those effects with percussion and with rising tonality. Like risers, it's just rising tonality, right? And if you rise the tonality with a string instrument, doesn't matter. It's still gonna be a tension increase, kind of, just like a riser. So yeah, we have the first violin playing the melody on higher octaves, the second violin's doing the riser thing, and the string ensemble also are playing the melody that the French horn are playing. So yeah, that's what they're doing, and that's why like the energy rises here. Then what do we have? We have guitar doing things. What is the guitar doing? I forgot. Oh yeah, the guitar is playing the same chords as before. No, new chords, along with the big strums. Again, kind of crappy. I just added them because I wanted to give this part that Western feel. So I tried to do rhythm on guitars, and I changed the harmonies depending on the harmonies of the rest. But yeah, I didn't. I mean, it sounds okay when you listen to it with everything else, but when you listen to it alone, you're like, what the fuck? It's so bad. But yeah, serves its purpose. And then we have some Western distorted guitars, I think, playing the bam 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 bam. And they again are layered. They are just layers, layer to the bass drum. And then they disappear because in this part, instead, the melody is taken over by the French horn and the violins and the string ensemble. The percussion. Same thinking as before. Before the repetition, I put a bit of a fill or something. Multiple piatti and stuff like that. And same thinking as before in the way I use piatti to accentuate some notes and stuff like that. And before the finale here, we have another fill. Like you hear bam, 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 bam. You know something is about to happen. And you know, these are psychological cues we composers put in our tracks. And those help the energy translate in a much more genuine way. It's important that you work on your transitions this way, you know, with markers, like put big chords, put percussion fills, increase the tension, increase the rhythm, increase the power in your percussion, stuff like that. Do whatever is in your power to lead your listener throughout your track. This is what I've done in this track. That's why when people listen to the track, they're like, oh my God, I was so enticed into this track from the beginning to end. That's why. It's not magic. It's just that I wrote it in such a way that it sounds interesting. After that thing, we finally have the finale, which is like one of the most spectacular parts of the track. But it's also spectacularly simple. Let's check out how I made it. So the first thing we're going to check out is actually the percussion, because now in the finale, they are probably one of the most important elements because the percussion bring the power and the rhythm. So if I, after this build up of the percussion, I resolved with some slow and, you know, weak percussion, that finale would have been terrible. So I try to bring the percussion to the most amount of power I can by doing this. So we have the piatti going crazy, kind of. Wait, let me isolate the piatti. Yeah, sorry, it's lagging a little bit. Now it started to become too much powerful for the CPU or something. Then we have the timpani doing this. And then we have some damage percussion. So you hear the overall rhythm. The overall rhythm is like pa 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 pa, right? You're gonna see that rhythm is followed by everything else in terms of in the orchestra. But yeah, come on, computer. Anyway, we also have some type rolls, and that's that for the percussion. Let's actually check out what the strings are doing. So the strings here, we have the the second violins doing. After that, I decided to resolve with very simplistic staccato notes, which are these ones. So there is the basses. There are the basses which are doing this. Very simple, and I decided to use long notes for the bass instead of staccato notes because I wanted the low end to be more consistent, and that's just why I use marcato longs. And as you see here, at a certain point they go higher, but there's a degree of repetition which stays like bum 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 bum, like. Because in finales, you don't need to be melodic, you know? You just need to be powerful. It needs to, like, if you repeat it, you repeat the same thing, but you make it more and more powerful with the percussion going crazy behind, like beneath it. it's gonna result in a rise of tension. The finale is just tension rising to the maximum extent. And you can rise the tension by repeating a sound with more and more intensity as it repeats itself. You don't need to add melodies, right? Sometimes it's actually the repetition that makes the tension. So that's what I did here. You're gonna notice I did something very simplistic with the rest of the strings. So let's check out what the cellos are doing, for example. Yeah, this is a bit bugged. That's what it's supposed to sound like. And you notice it goes higher though. Like it's doing the repetition, but it's going a bit higher in terms of tonality. That's also important. Tonality and repetition are important. But you can also be just harmonic and not melodic and have great energy going on. So the violas instead are doing this. So they're doing while the violins are doing this. That's again harmonic, not that much melodic. And the second violins are doing again the thing. And at the end you have this sort of variation. So it's nothing too impressive, it's just that I'm repeating things and making them more intense by going higher in tonality and going crazy with the percussion. So this is what the strings sound like. And again, to bring an end to this statement, you notice the bass is doing bam, 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 bam. Because now at the end it's gonna be like bam. So that's you always need to bring an end to your statement, especially in the finales. That's very important. So repetition and then end the statement. The brass. Let's check out what the brass is doing. Same thing as the strings, really. Let's check out the French horn. They're doing two things. They're doing and then there is another voice doing which is this. And even more important, before this there is this brass crescendo here. Yeah, we didn't hear it. I thought it was important. I guess it wasn't. But yeah, I added this sort of... No. I don't know. That was supposed to be a crescendo, but whatever. So we have that in the French horn. Let's check out what the trumpets are doing. Oh look, it's the same thing that the strings are doing. Again, you don't need to be super melodic and super complex. Repetition pays off in this kind of stuff. You just need to bring everything together. And that's the thing, probably. You know, throughout the track, everything was like, they were playing the same melody and stuff like that, all the instruments, but in a kind of distributed way, right? In this part, the brass notes they're all staccato notes that are also played by the violins and the strings, etc. So everything is coming together to do the exact same thing for 3 seconds. When that happens on the span of 2 minutes and a half of a track where that did not happen, if that happens, those 3 seconds are gonna sound mind-blowing because you never heard that before in the track. So that's another thing you can take advantage of if you didn't do unison things in your track before. You can play with unison, you can make things play in unison in these sort of parts. And it's sort of what I did in the transition before the second chorus as well, a bit. So yeah, that was a weird explanation, but I hope you understood. And yeah, the bass trombone. Let's check out what the bass trombone is doing. It's just playing the most important note to enforce some accents. The bassoons, what are they doing? I mean, nothing too weird. So play it together with the strings. You have the second violin, so and the rest is so that's why it sounds so powerful. Everything comes together, but mostly the power is given by the crazy. Again, cymbals very important. Cymbals are very important to give these parts an edge. So those are also pretty cool. And we have the before the finale we have the that again is a marker of a new part of the structure, which is the finale. And after that, we left, the harmony hanging. That note there is not the root note of the song, I think. So the listener kind of expects the track to resolve to a bum, and that's what I did here. So what I did here, let's check out what the strings are doing. They are pretty much having like each string, like the basses, the cellos, the violas, etc. They are playing, I think, tremolo notes, and they are increasing in intensity as the track goes. Because I wanted to couple this with the percussion that are doing. But yeah, let's check out what the strings are doing now. So first we have the basses and cellos coming on, and then we have the viola. But they're just playing like basic notes. So the basses are playing this note with tremolo. Sorry, this is the sub bass, not the bass. This is the bass. And it's increasing, I think, the expression, I think. Or maybe the dynamics, I don't remember. Oh yeah, I'm increasing the dynamics to make that swell, and then the cellos are playing the same, not the same thing, but yeah, something similar. The first violins, something similar, but it starts after, and the violas as well. So as it goes higher and higher. Right? Then I think I'm doing the same thing on the brass. No, I'm not. On the brass, I'm doing this actually. Crescendo followed by some staccato notes. That what it was supposed to sound like, not exactly what it sounded like, but whatever. French horn is doing something similar, at least it's trying. And then we have the percussion. This is the part I like the most in the percussion. No, not the part I like the most, but it was kind of cool. So we have some timpani doing this. Sorry, in this pattern we had the timpani and the cymbals and everything. So let's check out one of, we have this timpani. Bum, bum. So one is just doing a roll, and then the other is like bum 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 bum, like these notes here. Then below that we have this, which I think is more timpani. No, this is like toms. And then we have the cymbals doing. And yeah, that's like a cymbal roll. Then what do we have? I think, yeah, we have some tubular bells doing this. Sorry, isolated. So all together with percussion. So one thing I did here was also, as you see, like here we had 155 BPM, here it goes to 60, and then it kind of moves between 60 to 550 or it goes higher. I wanted to tweak the BPM to change along with the track, to slow it down a little bit, make it sound more human. So that's what I did. And then the finishing touch was this guitar. That is one of those guitars that if you hear it alone, it's bad, but if you hear it in context, it sounds pretty okay. And it's this. That's freaking Western as hell. So together. Ta-da! That's how this track pretty much was made. And after I wrote this track, of course, I applied some mastering with Isotope Ozone and this OTT thing. But in terms of mixing, people actually when they write music and it doesn't sound good, they think, all right, the problem is mixing. I didn't apply almost any mixing in this track. Almost nothing. There are a few EQs, not too many though. That might be because I'm lazy, but it didn't need those to sound good. It sounded good even despite the mixing. Of course, I added reverb. Of course, I balanced the volume, and of course, I applied the mastering. But there is little to no mixing. I did some panning because if you want your track to sound more open, a cool thing you can do is to pan instruments. So I pan them in the mixer. I pan them here a bit. And yeah, a stereo separation here, but nothing too crazy. So there is like no mixing on this track. And I wrote this again entirely by ear without knowing music theory. As you might have noticed throughout the course of this tutorial, I didn't use advanced music theory terms because I do not know them. But you can write good music by ear. And if you want to learn more, you can check out more tutorials on this channel. What I really recommend you to do is to get one of those Evenon courses because they are incredible. And right now, this week, they're having a Black Friday sale, so they're like 30% off. If you want to buy them, the link is in the description of this video. And I can vouch for them because they're really amazing. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. And by the way, if you want to analyze this track on your own, you can download the stems, like the Orchestral multitracks, over to my Patreon page, so you can, import it in your DAW and analyze the strings independently from the brass and stuff like that. You also get the MIDI with those, but to get them on Patreon, you need to donate some money there. So, you can download them, but if you pledge. So, by the way, I take this chance to really thank the people who are supporting me on Patreon and are making it possible for me to release tutorials and take an hour or two to make such videos and put them on the internet. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this helped you out. If it did, do share it with a friend who might earn some value out of it, or share it in I don't know, composer forum that you know where it's allowed to share videos like this, because I just want to reach the most amount of people possible and help out. So that's why I run this channel. So that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.